Today we've got a real treat for Honda lovers. You might have heard of the incredible Honda collection in Motegi, Japan. Perhaps you've even heard of the secret American Honda collection in Torrance, California. One of Honda's core values is dreams, and today we're going to meet a guy who followed his own dream to build a Honda collection in Wisconsin?
Well, the idea of a Honda car collection came about not that long ago. I was only going to buy old Hondas that had some connection to my racing history. So the first one I bought was a Honda CRX SI. We had a lot of success with the 4th gen Prelude, so that was a must-have. But then Accord came up, like a 1st gen Accord, and it's like, no, we don't need that car. That has nothing to do with my history. We never raced it, but it sure looks nice. And then one thing led to another. It's like, okay, well, we'll buy this car. And then maybe things got a little carried away after that.
Peter, I see you've got one of the first generation Honda Civic CVCCs. Tell us a little bit about this car.
Yeah, the Civic came out in America in 1973. This is actually the last year of the first generation Civic, this being a 1979 model. And it was actually one of the first cars I ever had, except I had it on order at the dealership and they could just never deliver it because they were just so popular. This was probably the top of the line with the houndstooth two-tone interior. It had the wood shift knob and the wood steering wheel, so it was the Mac Daddy Civic of its era.
And what do we have up here, this blue car?
That's actually a cult favorite. That is a 1991 real-time four-wheel drive station wagon. And the cool thing about that car and why it's here in the museum is not only because of its cool technology of four-wheel drive, but also we have the history of real-time racing on the ice with that car.
Wow, you've got a couple clean examples here. 2nd generation CRX SI.
Yeah, you just don't see these anymore. This one's a one-owner vehicle. It has 10,500 miles on it and all stock, and it still smells like it did when it was new.
Wow, okay, and what came after this CRX?
Well, in this country, this was the last of 2 generations of CRX, but it was replaced by the Del Sol here, and in other parts of the world it was still called a CRX, but in our country it was a Del Sol. And this one is special because it's the VTEC version, so it's the highest end, and it's got all of 160 horsepower, and it was a really nice machine.
Here's some more of the obscure heritage stuff. Z600, Moto Compo, favorite of a lot of Honda fans, Trail 70, but I think what's really unique is how original this N600 is.
Right, these 2 cars were the first cars sold in America by Honda, but check this thing out, 8,600 miles, and check out these door panels. Still have the original plastic on them.
Wow.
And this was what they called the trunk bike, so it could live in the trunk, you'd get to your destination, get towards the center of town, and then you could park your car and take this the rest of the way.
Wow, I see up here a 2nd generation Accord.
That's the first year of the 2nd generation, 1982, and this is probably a particular example that might have been on the showroom floor of a dealership because it has every known option to man. It had a lot to live up to because the 1st generation Accord was such a big hit. This car was taking over for that, and it had a pretty big demand.
Hey Peter, anybody can collect a few Hondas, but you went whole hog and built out the original facility facade and put a delivery truck in front of it.
You bet, yeah, there's very few pictures of the original storefront that they had starting in 1959, but we took one of those pictures and tried to replicate the whole building, including the pickup truck. So we went out and found the exact truck that was in that photo.
Well, I love the building. I want to have an office in there.
Hey Charles, check this out. Didn't you have one of these? This is a 1st generation Prelude.
Wow, I sure did, Peter. I had one for 20 years. You know, they called it the sports car for grown-ups. It had 72 horsepower, and it was the first Honda to come with a factory power moonroof as standard equipment.
Pretty awesome.
And what about that little screamer?
This is Civic SI, and it has the double wishbone 160 horsepower, 8,000 RPM engine, and definitely one that's very hard to find in the marketplace, especially in stock trim.
A man of your integrity, you got a lot of Integras.
You bet. Here's a 1st gen special edition, and then we have 5 different Integra Type Rs, one in every color that they came in. And we've got a second generation Prelude, a third generation Accord, that was the top of the line SEI model, first generation CRX SI, but the later years with the full color. There's an Integra that we won the rally championship with. And then here's a couple Integra Type Rs that were never sold in our country. So this one was a test car that Honda R&D used at the Nürburgring, and this one is actually a four-door.
Wow, I've never seen that before.
Very rare. All right, here's a couple great ones, very significant models. There's the T360 and the Honda Vamos. And then over here...
Hey, wait a minute. You got to talk about this little S600.
Well, this is a very special car. This was a one family of ownership vehicle. They never sold them in the States. They sold them in other markets, including Canada. So this is a left-hand drive one, way ahead of its time. A water-cooled 606cc engine, double overhead roller bearing cam, 4 carburetors, making 57 horsepower. So that's almost 100 horsepower per liter, which is pretty incredible for that era.
Wow, and what was the RPM on this motor?
Actually, the red line was 9,500 RPM, which is the highest red line of any production car ever sold.
And this is the coupe model. How many of these did they make?
This is a 1966. They made 281 coupes that year out of a total production of the S600 line of 1,600.
Incredible.
All right, well, we only have 4 cars in our showroom, and certainly 4 very significant cars. But this first generation Honda Accord could be the most significant car in the whole collection. You know, when the Civic came out in '73, that made a big impact in the American marketplace. But it wasn't until 1976 when the big Honda, they called it, came out, did it really put the American landscape into a different perspective. And this car is almost completely unused. And check out this engine room. If you want to know what a 1981 Honda Accord looked like in 1981, there it is.
That's amazing.
Just unbelievably rust-free and in incredibly mint condition.
And how many miles?
4,600.
Wow, it's time for the first oil change.
Obviously, the Honda brand is very special to me, but it's because the cars are so special. They have emotion, they have technology, they have reliability, they have performance. Just so many things on the list that you can check off that makes a car great. We've been racing Hondas for 32 years. Real-time racing has been around that whole time. Well, for me personally, my list of championships, I've had 7 World Challenge championships, but we had other drivers that won 7 more. So Real-time has won 14 World Challenge championships in the 26 years we've been competing in that series. And then to see the road-going versions and some of the race cars, to have them close by is a lot of fun and helps you wake up in the morning to know that you get to come in and spend time with them.
So passion is another one of Honda's core values. And I think you'll agree that Peter's a great example of that. Hey, thanks for the ride.
Thanks for coming.